Good evening, and it definitely is evening. It's currently 21:41 in the UK, dark outside, winter's coming, as they say. Here in the UK we have biscuits, come back to that in a sec. We have a type called Jammy Dodgers and a type called Custard Creams. I can have neither of which because they've got milk in them. So I'm going to try and recreate a plant-based version, but I'm going to put them together because I've always wanted to see that happen, and it never did that I'm aware of. So I'm going to have a go. I said I was going to come back to it and I didn't, so now I am. Okay, biscuits in England, in the UK really. Talking about things like shortbread, or I'm trying to think what people would have had in the States. Anything that's kind of more fine and delicate. A cookie is like a chocolate chip chunky thing. A biscuit in the States is a bit like a Yorkshire pudding, dumpling, oven cake maybe, savoury, and they put what they call gravy on it. But that's not what we're making here. We're making the sugary sweet type of biscuits, just to clarify. This is the jam that I'm going to use. I made it from some boysenberries, vegan butter, sunflower oil. You could probably use coconut, but I wanted to try and do it as cheaply as possible. Glutinous rice flour. This is what they make dim sum dumpling type textures. They're kind of stretchy, a little bit like a pasta, but made with rice. Flour, obviously plain flour. I buy cheap supermarket owned brands. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. You can if you want. I'm out of caster sugar, which is the really fine stuff, which is good for baking. Don't have it. Granulated sugar as well, we'll have to do. And I've got some Demerara sugar. I'm hoping it's going to keep some of its kind of crystals as it bakes. A bit of salt. Salt makes everything taste good. Vanilla, just vanilla essence. Then I've got some cashews, cornflour. In the States, that's cornstarch. For now, I think this is everything I'm going to need, but you never know. As I'm working with flour and other powdery things today, I am going to be responsible for once and wear an apron. So I thought I'd share a tip back from my waitering days. If you struggle to tie an apron behind your back, as long as the ties are long enough, hold the top down. It's neat and tidy, out of your way, and it's unlikely to undo itself as well. I've been having a look online, trying to get some inspiration of how to make the custard inside a custard cream, and I've come across a video from bussanor.cooking on YouTube. It's the cashews, rice flour and sugar. In the video use a small blender. So I thought, oh, I'll use the spice grinder that I use. But I don't know if it's going to work. So I think I'm going to try on the high-speed blender. And if that doesn't work, then I'll do it in small portions in that. So I put all of the cashews in, some of the sugar, and then I'm going to pulse it, so excuse me. So I'm going to scrape the sides down. I'm going to give that a go for another few seconds. And then I'll add in the other ingredients. Okay, so now I'm going to put in the rice flour and then the remaining sugar. Back in the blender. Oh wow, okay. Yeah, it's definitely getting very powdery. I'm wondering if you can hear what that sound is. It's my cat. It's amazing at 2 o'clock in the morning. Decant all of this into a clean, dry jar. I've got a video on how to get the labels off jars if you like things pristine, like I do. I'm going to show you another tip as well. I need to try it first, don't I? Tastes like custard creams. Probably won't get it all in, but there is a trick I'm hoping to show you. A little ladle, it's tiny. Basically, what you need is something that's going to be flat, that you can press downwards like that, and you basically pressing down. So I keep one edge against the jar and then just go all the way around and push down. If you just shove it in and start shoving it down, it'll go everywhere, much like many things in life. So yeah, go slowly. I might actually get all of this in. Did it? Yes! Nothing quite as satisfying as that. So you should have about 175 grams of custard powder. So the next step is to sieve the dry ingredients together and then slowly add in the oil and vinegar. So, but remembering that I was going to do the granulated Demerara sugar, I was going to do that right at the end. So I'm going to try and remember not to put that in. So I've got 250 grams of plain flour, 50 grams of granulated sugar, half a tablespoon of cornstarch. It's a shortbread recipe. Now normally you want shortbread really crumbly, and apparently the cornflour helps with that. Because I want the biscuits to have a bit of snap and a bit of crunch rather than crumbling, I am going to put it in to get the texture a bit delicate. This is my thinking. But then I'm going to overwork the dough, because with shortbread, I've heard the best way of cooking it is to rub it between your fingers and then just very carefully put it together. But I'm going to go give it a really good kneading, so hopefully it will get a really tight structure, because especially with a sandwich type biscuit, I'm thinking when you bite into it, it might just collapse. That's the plan anyway. I'm normally a bit worried about baking because it always seems a bit more scientific to me than cooking does. But I've decided to just be brave and just go for it and see whatever happens, and I'm sure, you know, I can make something moderately edible. Okay, so I'm going to sift that in. So I'm going to do it a bit at a time, maybe a third at a time. Work your fork in circles, you can see that, but then make the circles a little bit bigger each time, and then go back into the middle and come back out again. Smush it against the side of the bowl, just to break up any big clumps of the oil and flour, because you're trying to distribute as much as you can, make it even. You could probably do this in a food processor, if you have one, with the dough hooks, maybe the blades, I don't know. Make some room. I tried to be clever by putting the vanilla in with the oil. Actually, it might have worked okay, because it does sink to the bottom, but then as I'm pouring it, it comes out, so it's okay. So that bit does take a while, but that's okay. Get a good arm workout. You probably could put all of the oil in at one go. I just don't know what would happen. Try it. So I'm going to do the just last bit of mixing on here, and it's fine. I think if it breaks apart, it's no big deal. I'm going to rest the dough after it's all mixed. Put it in the fridge. I forgot the sugar, didn't I? Okay. Poured the sugar on top because I forgot it, and I'm just going to try and combine it like this. Honestly, the Demerara sugar is starting to get worked in with the rest. So I'm now going to rest the dough for about 30 minutes or so, just let it set really firm, and then it'll be much easier to cut later. I actually put the dough in the freezer after a few minutes because I realised I wanted it colder quicker. I've weighed it. It should be around 465 grams in total. I don't know what that is in cups, but I'm going to cut it in half, keep half in the fridge, or maybe in the freezer actually, as I shape and cut the rest of it, just because the kitchen is a bit warm. Got some trusty little scales, put some flour on the work surface. Get your rolling pin that's in the drawer over there. Make sure your hands are nice and floury first, because that's a key stage. Always assemble your equipment first. Rolling pin, it is very crumbly. Thinking what I might do is put the ball into the mould and then kind of work the dough into the mould that way. When I want to lift the cutter off, ease the dough shape out a little bit. I think if I pull it in one go, it will just lift the whole lot off. Oh, I need to put the oven on. In 60 degrees Celsius. 325 Fahrenheit. I don't want them to change colour very much, so you want the heat to be quite gentle. Whereas if it's hotter, it'll cook faster on the top, so you'll get lots of colour before the inside of the biscuit is cooked, which I don't really want. As I'm taking the cutters off, I just go around the edges, tapping, because you'll see there's like a little bit of a lip, like a rim, and those bits will obviously burn. So you do want to work quite quickly with this dough. If you can, keep small fear that these are just going to melt and not biscuify, but we'll see. Worst case scenario, if it goes completely wrong, probably make granola out of it somehow. Some disasters can be averted. Sometimes not the end of the world that you think it is, and sometimes it's worse than you think it is. I've turned the oven off because I've decided I'm going to put them in the freezer again, just for 10 minutes, just to set firm again. I made some kind of pasty empanada type things, and they were definitely better after I put them in the fridge for a little bit. They seem to just bake a bit crispier, a bit firmer. They don't have to be perfectly even, although it is better if they are. The more even they are, the more even they'll cook. I'm going to put these in the freezer. Okay, taking these out of the freezer. Ideally they would have been in for a bit longer, but it's 1 AM, so let's see what happens. I don't know why, but I want to put the less chilled ones on the top. I'm thinking that the closer they are to the element at the top of the oven, I'm hoping that's going to kind of set the mixture faster, almost like searing it. I don't know if there's any scientific basis to that assumption, but that's what I'm going with. Don't look too bad. Okay, they're stiffening up. They've been in for, well, I forgot what time it was, I'm not gonna lie. I will check on the timestamps on the video and let you know exactly how long they've been in. But they've been in for some more minutes, firming up. They're getting biscuity, and the colour isn't too dark or anything. It's not getting over caramelized. So I'm gonna put these in for another 5-ish, 10 minutes. These are looking pretty good, and I think these could do with another between 5 and 10 minutes, 5 and 8 minutes maybe. But what I'm going to do at this point is put jam on half of them, jelly for the Americans. I've just realised I had meant to turn them over because the underneaths are all going to be flat, whereas the tops of them are going to be a little bit more irregular. So we need to flip them all. Biscuits are all turned over. So now back to the jamming, and just use the back of the spoon to kind of push it where you want it to be. I'm trying to find a balance between having enough to be tasty and not so much that it just melts and gloops off. These are all jammed up, ready to go back in the oven. Yeah, 5 minutes, and then I'll see how it's looking. An actual 5 minutes this time. By putting them back in the oven, what I'm hoping will happen is that the jam will start drying out a little bit, so that it sits there nicely rather than being wet to the touch or anything. These actually look great. I'm going to leave the oven door open for 30 seconds to a minute, just let some of the heat escape. Cool down a bit now. So I'm going to put these back in, and I'll pick it back up tomorrow. I'm pretty happy with how these have turned out. They look great. They didn't go too dark in the oven overnight, which is I was a bit concerned about. I did actually open the oven door after I turned the camera off last night, just to let more heat escape. It's got a nice kind of glaze almost. Now the plan is to make the custard filling, and then I'm going to attempt to pipe the filling in there. I just think it's going to be a bit easier, she says, to pipe it on there rather than trying to spoon it into the shape. There's 150 grams of icing sugar. This is 1.5 tablespoons of the custard powder. Use a fork to mix the icing sugar and custard powder together. 50 grams of softened butter. And then very similar to how you'll make the biscuit dough, pushing it through the tines of the fork. It will start to come together eventually. Once it's come together in a big, it's clumping up well, break it apart a little bit, spread it around the bowl. Then I'm going to add in a teaspoon of vanilla extract and just work it into the butter and sugar mixture. The colour looks consistent. There's no streaks of darker brown or streaks of white or anything like that, so which is a sign that everything's come together nicely and evenly. Now I bought a piping bag 8 years ago. I think I've used it twice. It's not my forte. This might go disastrously wrong. And we're only doing half of the heartland because it's going to be sandwiched together. These are probably going to be a little bit delicate. So I want to try and do it on there. I mean, you can do this any way you want. I mean, you can literally get a knife if you want and smear it on. I might try that with one. But I've done the outline. Now I'm just going to fill that in. So now, I'm going to put them together. Give it a very gentle push. Remember, it's a very delicate pastry, so I wouldn't vice grip it. So there's one done. You can see how it's sandwiched together in the middle. I'm going to try doing one with a knife. This mixture is hurting my hands. You could try adding maybe a teaspoon of sunflower oil or even melted coconut oil. That might make it a little bit looser and easier to pie. Fingers also seems to work well. From your hands is going to soften the mixture up a little bit, make it easier. I found that if you twist gently, if you sort of do that kind of movement, that seems to help stick them together without putting too much pressure on it. So there you have them. Some jammy custards. I'm going to leave them for about an hour, I think, to let the filling set or, you know, harden up a little bit. I'm very excited. Okay. They're really good. Next time I think I'd put more jam, now that I know it's not going to just melt and go everywhere. Thicker layer of jam. Oh my god. Adding the Demerara sugar like I did has really helped give it a nice little crispy kind of crunch to it. And the biscuits, it is soft and crumbly, but it is holding up really well. I did panic that it was gonna, as I bit into it, the whole thing was gonna collapse. But it seems to be holding up pretty well.